Hello,
Hey,
folks. I'm Johnny Goldman. Welcome to another podcast of Chutzpah and Soul. Today, we're doing something on the channel called Mental Health Enlightened, but it's also good for Chutzpah and Soul. So let's take it away with Santo.
hello. I'm Santo. I'm the one talking right now. Uh, I'm one of Johnny's clients for a few years. Yeah, I see him regularly to talk about ADHD, depression, and anxiety. Um, and sometimes we have these wonderful sessions where we just kind of go over things going on in our lives and keep it casual, keep it fun.
And, what keeps it fun is that, well, anyway, Santo's an uplifting guy. He happens to be an amateur actor and singer. And
Yeah,
he's going
no,
to tell you, yeah, he's going to tell you about the latest play that he's rehearsing right now.
yeah, I'm doing a production of Gilbert and Sullivan's Ruddigore with a community theater group called the Sudbury Savoyards. Uh, Very wonderful show about ghosts and curses. If you wish in the world to advance, your merits you're bound to enhance. You must stir it or stump it and blow your own trumpet, or trust me, you haven't a chance.
That's the
So,
kind of thing. That's the kind of thing. What could be better therapy than that? And what I think is that I think this essence of what I'm doing with Santo over the years is help him be grounded in his talent, his natural strength, and to feel grounded during sessions because sometimes he goes off a little bit, but there's so much talent to see.
I'm
And
blushing over here.
what we talk was that
You're making me blush. Go on.
okay. We talk about we talk about everything from names of strange occupations to details about ancient history to philosophy to all kinds of stuff. And it's never generic. So I want Sandra to tell us about
Yeah,
barrel makers. I don't think you've ever
you
met.
were really tickled. You were really tickled by this one, but it's a
Yeah.
Cooper. Cooper's a guy who makes barrels, and you were very tickled by that. You're also a big fan of milliners, who make hats, and Wainwrights, who make wagons.
Yeah, I want to see the Wainwright guy. What would he look like? What would he be? Where would he be working?
I mean, he'd probably have an outdoor shop. He'd probably have a little blacksmith setup, and
Uh,
probably a little woodworking setup. He'd have to
okay.
turn some
Wait.
wagon spokes. He'd have some plane tool for smoothing out the rim of the wheel, and then he'd have to make the bands and stuff. I imagine it's mostly making wheels, honestly.
Yeah. What kind of wood would he use? What do you think?
Oh,
That might be a trick question.
that's a no. It's tricky. I was thinking about it. Like I've been getting into woodworking recently, so I have to think a
Yeah.
lot about. So I actually have opinions about woods now. He's probably using whatever the toughest, hardest woods are around
Yeah.
because they don't compress as a wheel. So probably stuff like oak, maybe
Oh, yeah.
hickory if he can get it in enough quantity.
Okay.
Ash is good.
Uh-huh. Okay. And you have a pretty interesting plane yourself somewhere that you've shown me. I mean, we've looked at tools. Santo and I have investigated almost his basement. We haven't quite gone down there, but the lower
I'll give
levels
you the
of
tour
his mind,
sometime.
what really, the
Yeah,
the deeper
I can give you
level.
the tour sometime on the live
Okay,
show. But
yeah.
I wish I'd
Look,
grabbed it for this. But you know,
well, the deeper levels of his mind, right?
hmm
Okay. Um, so what happens with these kind of issues is that it segues. It always segues into
hmm
something else that's outrageous. It
hmm
has to be outrageous. So um, one of the things that Santo talks about a lot is ancient history, medieval history.
modern
The
history.
guy
I just
loves
like
it.
history.
History in general, right, right. But he's got angles on it. He's got angles. He's got stories. He's got details, and it's the kind of thing. If you had Santo as a ninth grade world history teacher, you wouldn't be here right now. You'd be uh, lecturing at a major. You'd be at Oxford at least. Okay.
Oh,
He would have inspired you. All right. So to
well,
give us some
we were
detail, yeah,
yeah, no,
yeah,
last time we had a session, we were talking about uh we were talking mostly ancient history. I was telling you about some of the interesting guys who people know about. We were ended up talking on the subject of Alexander the Great, who, for some reason, you thought needed a publicist. And I was like, I think the guy's pretty well known, honestly.
yeah. I was
But
talking to his agent. I did talk to his agent, by the way.
Alexander the Great's agent, yeah,
You know
I'm kind of
what?
surprised
Yeah,
you got that call. Agent to the stars and the conquerors of the ancient world, apparently. So,
pretty good.
but
Pretty good.
you know,
Yeah.
I was telling you that, yeah, and I was telling you the story about the Gordian knot, which is
Oh yeah.
yeah,
Yes. Go
which is a
ahead.
so that's a very famous one that you may have heard in idioms to cut the Gordian knot, but we'll get there. So the story as it happens is this is early on in Alexander's career as a world conqueror, and he's in Anatolia, modern day Turkey, and he hears a rumor about a small town, and in this town there is a cart. Now, carts in these days, usually there is a yoke which
Yeah.
connects the oxen and a tongue
Okay.
which extends out from the front of the cart, and these two are connected by a knot. And whoever can go to Gordian and untie this knot is going to conquer the world. Now, Alexander the Great, like most people in the ancient world, really took these kinds of myths and stories really seriously. And of
Yeah.
course, how could you turn up something like that if you
Yeah. It's like a dare. I mean, it's like a dare,
exactly?
right?
If I mean,
Yeah.
if you don't do it, then how are you going to conquer the world? Am I right?
Yeah.
You got to at
Right.
least try it out.
Absolutely. Right.
So he goes there, and he's looking at this, and he goes there with some of his generals, some of his soldiers, and he goes up to the cart, which is just in the middle of this small town in Turkey. It's probably like a roadside attraction of the ancient world. Is this magical world-conquering cart, and it's not. And he goes up to the cart and he looks at it, and this cart has this knot, and the knot is basically like a solid ball of rope. There's no visible ends. It's tight. It's almost like imagine a ball of yarn made of rope. That's what he's got to try and
Right.
untie here.
Right.
You know. Meanwhile, he's looking at it. He's looking at it. He's thinking about it. Townsfolk, of course, have come out because someone trying to untie the
Yeah.
untieable knot is
Yeah.
always a good time. It's a
Yeah.
funny time.
Are any of the townspeople's milliners or coopers or any of the other
Well,
guys?
there has to have been at least one Wainwright because they made the
Okay.
cart, right?
Yeah. Right. That's right. That's right. Okay.
So,
Okay.
so he's looking at it and looking at it, and all the generals are sitting there going, "What if he messes this up? That's going to be so bad. Everyone's going to hear about this." And here, the story diverges. There's two versions of this. The first version of this is that he's looking at this knot, and in addition to the knot, the yoke and the wagon tongue are held together by a pin that goes through both of them from the
Uh,
top.
What, he didn't
So,
know that in advance?
well, he knew that in advance.
Okay.
This is like standard cart design. This is like taking the lug
Okay.
nuts off of your tire. You expect those to
Oh,
be there.
okay.
So he,
Yeah.
he gets in there and he pulls the pin out from this knot, and then he's able to just kind of work the yoke back and forth, and the pin he's able to pry in there, and he's able to basically get the whole thing loose like that. Very clever. But that's not the story version of the story that people know about. The version of the story people know about, and the one I like better,
Tell us,
is
Santo. Tell us, Santo.
well, I'm getting there, Johnny. I'm getting there. He's
No, I
looking at
mean,
this knot.
no, I'm encouraging. I'm encouraging. I'm not demanding. I'm encouraging. Yeah. Right. Okay.
You're being a great audience, Johnny. He's looking at this knot. Alexander's looking at this knot. It's going to be a disaster when the troops hear about how he failed to untie this. And then Alexander reaches down and draws his sword and announces to the town, the generals, it doesn't matter how the knot is undone. He takes his sword and he chops it open, revealing the ends inside.
Is that called cheating?
I think it's called thinking laterally. I think
Uh-huh.
it's I think what he did there is like an early secret to business success.
Uh-huh. Tell me
You
about
know, you
that.
don't allow obstacles are opportunities, and
Right.
you got to think outside the box. You got to push the envelope. You got to
Yeah.
expand the idea space. I don't know what they call it these days.
Idea space. I hadn't heard that one. Um, yeah, and then you went, well, you also explained the other things he did, because I didn't remember all that stuff. And,
Eh,
when he was hanging out, who he hung out with, who he liked to
eh.
conquer,
Oh yeah,
who he
no.
was
I was
yeah.
telling you when I was a kid, the BBC released a documentary called "In the Footsteps of Alexander the Great," where a presenter literally followed the route his army took, and um, I don't think you could make that journey today. Not to
Why not?
bring too much news into this, but the journey goes from Greece to Turkey to Syria to Lebanon to Israel to Egypt, back through through Iraq and Iran
Right.
and Afghanistan and Pakistan and finally to India.
Okay, would you call that an easy vacation, let's say in contemporary terms, those places he went to?
Well, in the old, I'd call that a heck of a walk. Um, I'd call that 6 or 7 years of your life if you're Alexander the Great. I'd call that, if you're doing that nowadays, I'd call that a
Yeah.
lot of paperwork.
How about suicide?
Possibly. Depends
All
on
right.
how well you did your paperwork.
Yeah, I mean, it's all dangerous places, right?
All dangerous places, all politically fraught places,
Yeah,
especially if
yeah,
you're a citizen. I don't think a U.S. citizen can go to Iran right
right,
now
that's right,
legally
that's right, yeah,
without special exemptions. So
right, right.
uh,
So,
th-
he went to those places in order to he did he conquer all those the whole
he conquered all of it. He and his army went through all of it and conquered it. He had a personal beef against the Persian Empire,
alright,
which was basically in control of all those places
okay,
for hundreds, if not thousands, of years. Essentially, it
okay,
was kind of a constant presence in the Middle East for most of
yeah,
history until fairly
right.
recently.
Oh, that's why yeah, because the Persians were the Babylonians, right? And right?
Persians are Iranian, actually.
No, but,
Babylonians are more.
no, the empire, wasn't the empire which empire was that? The Persian?
Persians were based in Iran.
Okay, they weren't called the Babylonian Empire?
No, that was something different.
Okay,
That was
alright,
older.
okay. I was older.
Um,
Okay.
but if you remember Thermopylae and the Greeks and the Spartans,
Oh, the Greeks and the Spartans, yeah. Okay,
those guys were fighting against Persians too.
okay. Oh, they weren't fighting each other?
I mean, they fought each other too, but like the Spartans at the pass, that was against the Persians. So,
Oh, okay,
and
okay.
Alexander the Great kind of read about that. You know, he learned about it from his tutor Aristotle, guy you might have heard
Oh,
of,
I
and
think
said,
I did.
and
Wait a
he
minute,
got,
can we
and he,
can we simulate a lesson between Aristotle and Alexander?
that,
That's hard.
hmm,
That would be
that,
hard.
that's a bit of that's a heck of an improv prompt there. Uh,
Right, right. You wouldn't do that at Friday Night Improv in Cambridge or something,
Probably
right?
not. I mean,
Yeah,
it's how do you convey Aristotle in your character? Is it like,
yeah.
I'm Aristotle. Hi, I'm Aristotle. I think that flies come from rotten meat, and I used to get body slammed by my teacher Plato, who was an Olympic wrestling champion.
Body slams is good. Okay, so he teaches Alexander what again?
Bunch of stuff, but most importantly, Greek history. And
Okay,
Alexander is basically like, oh, these Persians used to be enemies of the Greeks, and and they invaded us once, and I'm going to get back at them.
okay.
And so
Uh,
when his father Philip dies, and Alexander is, I think, 19 or something. He's very young. Uh, guess he takes the arm and he goes a conquering, and that's what he does
yeah.
for the next 7 or 8 years.
And when he becomes emperor or whatever, king, um, does he feel accomplished? You know,
Well,
I don't know.
he goes
Yeah,
back. Well, he probably does. Well, I don't think so actually, because he only stopped because his men eventually said, "Look, boss, we've been following you all this way. You've done great things. We'd like to go home now, please."
yeah. Oh, okay.
Well,
And where's home?
home is back in Greece,
Okay.
and this is in India that this conversation's taking
Oh,
place.
okay.
So
Right.
home's away a ways.
Yeah. You
So
get there.
Alexander takes the march back. He
Ah,
marches his army at one point through a desert, loses a bunch of his men. He loses Hephaestion, the love of his life.
oh, tell us about her.
Him,
Oh, him. Okay.
Alexander the Great, had a friend and lover named Hephaestion, who was his
Okay.
constant companion. He once said of Hephaestion, "Other men love me because I am king. Hephaestion loves me for who I am."
That's excellent. That's
Mhm.
excellent.
And the Greeks had a interesting view of homosexuality.
Yeah. What was her view again? What was her view?
Basically, you have sex with women to produce children because you
Yeah.
kind of need to, but really your closest emotional connections are with other men.
Okay. Okay. Including sexual.
Yes.
Okay. All right. So
I
how
mean,
long did he
Alexander did
hang?
marry, did have children. His
Yeah.
first child died, as
Okay.
is all too common,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
the love of his life was Hephaestion.
Feisty. Okay.
Hephaestion
Oh, well,
died.
that's is that where that term feisty comes from?
Don't think so. Hephaestion's a
Okay.
later thing,
Okay.
if,
Yeah. All right.
but
So he takes
Alexander the
fight.
Great eventually ends up in Babylon, or modern
Okay.
day Baghdad,
Yeah.
and he dies.
Ah.
He's not even he's like he doesn't even get to the age of 30. He spent the
Whoa.
last 10 years conquering the world and then coming back, never sees his home again.
Uh-huh. Okay. And he dies in Babylon. Okay. And so there's not, yeah. But he left a legacy, obviously,
Left a
right?
legacy.
Yeah.
We got on the subject because we were talking about the Maccabees. I know that
Yes.
you have an
Yeah.
interest in Jewish
Right.
history specifically,
Right.
and the first revolt was fought against um, the
The Babylonians.
Seleucid
Where's
Empire,
that?
which was kind of a successor to Alexander.
Oh,
His
okay.
generals divided this territory that he'd conquered between themselves, and the
Okay.
guy controlling the Syrian, Israel, Middle Eastern part of it was a guy named Seleucus.
Oh, so yeah, I've heard of him. Yeah.
Seleucus? I don't know how that's pronounced. Seleucus?
Yeah. And oh, he was a descendant. Okay. And then the second Maccabee revolt was
I
against the Romans, right?
I
Y-
think so.
Yeah.
Yes,
Okay.
that
Okay.
was that was the second temple, right? You probably
Yeah.
know more about this than I do.
Yeah. The second time. I'm not good with dates, Santo. You've got dates like, seared into your head, I think.
Yeah, it's, you study history, you kind of learn that dates aren't super important.
Yeah.
They're only important so that you know relatively when things happened, right?
Oh,
A
right.
date, it's like, all right, around the same time as this was happening, or this happened after this. And like the
Right.
exact number isn't super important
Right.
usually.
Right.
The
You
story's
know,
more important.
yeah. Well, tell us some other stories. We talked a number of times about other famous folks that you had some great stories about.
I mean, when we were doing the ancient world, we want to do another
Yeah.
ancient world one that ties in
Yeah.
with this. I was
Yeah.
telling you about the Punic Wars, right?
Yeah.
And the
Oh,
Punic
yeah.
Wars,
Yeah. I hadn't even heard of that. Yes.
yeah, they're the wars between early Rome and Carthage.
Okay.
Rome is this expansionistic military rising power, and Carthage is a mercantile rising power.
Okay.
Uh,
So
and
Carthage is like Silicon Valley, and uh, Rome is like what?
I'd say I don't know if you can put this in strictly business terms, but
Okay.
Rome's more like we're into Stoic philosophy,
Yeah.
and Carthaginians are more into business success. Um,
Okay. Yeah. We'll talk about Stoic philosophy later in this session, maybe.
mhm.
Um, I love the Stoics, but go ahead.
But there were three Punic Wars. The first one was more or less an even fight. Um, although second one is the one everyone hears about. That's the famous Hannibal crossing the Alps one.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
A
And
guy named Hannibal Barca.
he crossed it on an elephant, right?
He crossed it. I don't know if he was
With
riding the elephant the whole time, but he had about 15 or 16 with him. And he got
whoa.
those poor suckers through the Alps. So quite a quite a feat. He
Yeah.
left North Africa, landed in Spain, and walked all the way to Italy. So
Well, okay.
with his elephants,
Right.
and proceeded to be the absolute terror of the Romans for the next 7 or 8 years. They
Okay.
he just marched up and down that peninsula, you know, kicking the butt of every army that came across him, but he couldn't attack Rome because Rome had
Okay.
walls.
Uh-huh.
And that was
Uh-huh.
really their undoing because all that time the Romans were building up strength elsewhere, and eventually he had to go back home, lost a bunch of his allies, and a Roman general named Scipio Africanus eventually beat him. That was the end of that.
Wait a minute.
But
What did he do? What did he do to him? The Roman general?
the Roman general beat him.
Oh,
There was a
okay. Beat him.
battle commanded by Scipio versus Hannibal, and Scipio won.
Uh-huh.
That's also
Okay.
where he became known as Africanus, because Romans love to give you a honorific name saying the thing that you did.
Uh-huh. Okay. What the mistake was made by Rome for building the wall? Or
No,
what
the
were you
mistake
saying?
was made. I don't even know if it was a mistake. The mistake was made by Hannibal not being able to close out the war by taking Rome.
Oh, okay. Okay. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
the reason I want to tell you all that, though, is that there is a wonderful little story that ties in earlier, which is
Okay.
after Carthage is beaten, Hannibal goes into exile, and he ends up at as basically a hanger-on at the court of the Seleucid Empire.
Right.
Those guys who the Maccabees fought against.
Right.
And one time, Scipio Africanus pays the Seleucids a visit, and he and Hannibal end up sitting next to each other at dinner.
Oh, right. That's right. Go
And
ahead. I love this story. Yeah.
and they're kind of doing small talk things, they're talking past each other, but Scipio's got a bit of a bee in his bonnet. And he basically at one point turns to Hannibal and he says, "So Hannibal, who do you think is the best general in all of history?" And Hannibal says the diplomatic answer, "Well, obviously, the greatest general in history is Alexander the Great." Sure, says Scipio, you can't argue with that. The man conquered the most of the known world before his 30th birthday, so got to
Right.
respect that.
Right.
And Scipio's like, all right, fair enough. Who do you think is the second best general? Hmm? Hmm? And Hannibal says, well, second best general is me. Look at all those battles I won. And Scipio's like, really? I beat you. So what do you think I am? And Hannibal goes, well, I think you're the third best general. At this point, Scipio's a little miffed. He thinks he's being slighted and says, well, if you had beaten me, then where would you be? And Hannibal goes, if I had managed to beat you at that battle of the plains of Zama those years ago, I'd be the greatest general who ever lived.
Oh, you mean and forgetting about Alexander? Oh yeah. What was the punchline on that? What was the
No,
reasoning?
that,
What's that?
Hannibal basically said if he had managed to beat
Yeah,
Scipio,
yeah,
Hannibal would be the greatest general ever, which
yeah,
is kind of a wonderful backhanded compliment a bit because yeah, you beat me,
yeah.
but if I'd beaten you, I'd
Oh,
be
oh, oh,
really,
oh,
really
right.
good.
That's right. That's right. So he found a trick, diplomatic way to reduce the conflict or whatever.
He found a way to compliment somebody without giving any ground and
Excellent.
do it in kind of a cheeky backhanded way as well.
That's right.
Unfortunately, we
Right.
don't know any other conversations about that, or if they had, a kind of late night discussion section where they went over all their battles and their wars, or if they left friends. But we do have that little exchange at dinner that
Yeah.
hinted that there was at least some mutual respect.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. I like that. And what about our Stoic friends? What can we say about them?
Well, you mean the Romans?
Yeah, Romans and Greeks, the
Romans and
Stoics,
Greeks.
the philosophers, Morales and Epictetus. I don't know, all those guys who,
Now, now,
yeah,
well, now you're kind of talking about stuff that isn't really my area of expertise. I like political philosophy
okay.
and kind of what do you call it? What's the name for philosophy that thinking about thinking?
Oh,
Or
yeah, not epidemiology. What is that called? Epistemology.
epistemology, yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Or also like kind of you're also talking to about like life philosophy.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
We
When did
were
you get into, when did you start realizing about epistemology?
it's a fairly recent thing because I kind of got into political philosophy through an interest in history, and then I
Yeah.
did a little bit of reading and listening. I've got some courses on tape and stuff about philosophy, and kind of a little bit of that epistemology stuff started to drift in,
Yeah. Yeah.
and that kind of how do you live your life sort of philosophy.
Yeah. And what have
You
you
know, I
taken
was,
to heart? Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I've learned. I was telling you about the in the footsteps of Alexander the Great.
Yeah, the show, the TV
Yeah,
series,
and I was thinking that evoked one of my favorite philosophical terms, which
which
is
is,
hauntological.
huh? Okay. How do you
Hauntolog
spell it? Yeah.
Hauntology,
Okay. Okay.
hauntology,
Okay.
which is a somewhat informal term that means it's the ghost of a future that never was.
The ghost of a future that never was. Yeah, that sounds mystical, right?
It does sound mystical,
Yeah.
but it refers to things like when you look at you see like any 50s science fiction stuff about the atomic age where we're
Right.
going to all have flying cars and
Right.
all of
Right.
that.
Right.
That is a envisioned future that never came to pass.
Right. Right.
That is hauntology. Um,
But they didn't know that at the time that it started, right?
yeah, they had a
Okay.
vision for the future that
Yeah.
never was to be.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
there's a if you want to ever break your heart,
Yeah.
um, there is a Soviet time capsules from the were recently opened up. And these
Okay.
are time capsules from like the 1918, 1920.
Oh, around the
and
beginning of the revolution, the Russian
right
Revolution.
early on in the revolution.
Yeah.
And I remember one of them opens with the line, "Greetings, comrades of the future. I know you have abolished war."
Right. Right. You said they've recently been opened from Soviet archives or something?
Yeah,
Yeah, you're looking it up.
I I am looking it up.
That's
Sometimes
okay. Yeah,
in the quest for conversational knowledge, even in a therapy session, it can be useful to
yeah,
look things up.
definitely. I allow that totally. I reinforce that, you know, I empathize with that,
Mhm.
whatever.
Yes, these are all from capsules from 1917, from the year of the revolution. They were opened
Yeah.
in 2017s. Uh,
Oh, 100
and
years
they say
later.
things like,
Yeah.
"You're the lucky generation. Wars are just history." Uh, you'll probably grow gardens in the Arctic Circle. That one might actually come to pass. You've
That did?
eliminated harmful bacteria and viruses, aging and sickness. We address you, those who don't know what war is.
Wow. 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 So they opened it to the public, to the world,
Hmm.
the Russians?
Yeah, these are
Okay.
in Russia and the Ukraine, and these were written in the year of revolution, 1917, and were
Right.
just opened a few years ago. And
Where were they
makes me,
stored? Where do you think they were stored all this time? No.
I don't know where they were. I know
Okay.
roughly what cities they were, but
Okay.
if you look them
Wow.
up, you can find them. Uh,
Yeah. Well,
but
I mean, that's a wonderful example. That's a wonderful example, right?
it's
Yeah.
1917. You, we don't know what it's 2017, and we don't know what war is. That's
Yeah.
that's future.
It didn't come about. Yeah. Yeah.
No.
Um, yeah.
Yeah, I I do like having these discussions in our sessions about history in the past. Kind of sometimes it's really nice just to be able to talk a bit. Sometimes I think a therapy
Yeah.
session can just be a nice conversation,
Oh,
chance to
yeah. Yeah. And,
take a break from the grind.
yeah, right. Yeah, otherwise, we're just gonna talk about your, what do you call it? Your job that's on the,
Yeah.
on the level of, enlightenment, renaissance. Yeah, kind of a renaissance situation, right?
Hmm.
Right.
You know,
I'm
I
being
work.
Yeah,
I work in public health, homeless services, and it's the issues that kind of mentioned at the beginning. We struggle with, and like all people, I struggle with, among other things. Excuse me. I struggle with crises of confidence,
yeah,
and struggle with staying on task and focus. And I think, if I may, Johnny, one thing I think I've
yeah,
taken away from your lessons more than anything else is the importance of having your own story
yeah,
about as a way of kind of understanding yourself,
mhm,
put things in a way that res- having being able to talk about yourself in a way that resonates,
yes,
that
yes,
I did that and I can
right,
take pride and confidence from that.
right, right. No, and that's excellent. Thank you, Santo, because I mean, I saw early on, well, the connection between your talents, your passions, and what would make you focus, what would make you feel grounded, and what would allow you to tell your story. I mean, it was clear that there was a central story, not
Mhm.
just journalistic details, but a subjective story. And you've really brought it out. It's really come forward.
Thank you. I do, like you said, I do acting and performance a lot, and I think one of
Yeah.
the most important things if you do that is um, having an audience. Frankly,
Yes.
having someone
Yeah.
who can listen.
Yes. Tell
Um,
us about the most recent one, the one that's coming up.
I Before I go into that, I just you know just keep it personal for a second.
Yeah.
It's one thing is that there was a number of years in my life where I struggled with depression, and it's
Yeah.
kind of a haze, a void that I didn't really. It's hard for me to pull things out of that are useful life lessons or sources of pride.
Mm.
But you know, being able to look back on that and see that I was struggling with something, I did overcome something, and
Mm.
I've moved out from my parents' house. I've got a regular job now. More stable friendships. I'm not self-infantilizing, I guess, the way I was, that I've been
Yeah.
able to crawl out of that hole of depression
Yeah.
is and now I can kind of tell people about it now and not be as embarrassed because it's part of me. It's not the
Yeah.
proudest part of me, but it is a part of me, and it's something I've been through, and it's part of my story now.
Yeah. I don't know if we've talked about that so much. Have we?
I think we've talked about it a bit,
A bit.
but
Yeah.
and we'll talk about it more
Yeah,
in
definitely.
the future. So
Stay tuned. Stay tuned. I mean, yeah, right. No, the depression. Well, how do you remember, besides, well, essentially the acts you took, just like we say in cognitive behavioral therapy, it's thinking differently and acting on it, right?
Mhm.
So the acts that you took to move out of your parents' house and have a stable job and have stable friends, the sum total of that really helped you lift from depression. Is that right?
Yes, obviously, depression's something that you're never fully gone with. It's something I still struggle with, but
Yes. Yeah.
I'm doing so much better than I was even 5 years ago. And
Yeah.
it took a lot of help from people around me, from you know Johnny and other therapists, from my family and friends,
Right.
um, and was one good motivated kick to get me out the door and get me employed. Kind of started the ball rolling.
Which was what?
A friend offered me a job that
Uh-huh.
out here, and I
Uh-huh.
moved in with my sister, and then that fell through,
Okay.
and I had to scramble because now I had a responsibility to help cover rent, and I
Oh, okay.
was now that I didn't have now that I had taken on more responsibility, and I had the support of my sister,
Yeah.
and this was a little before I met you, Johnny,
Yeah.
but I found my first stable job, which was as a temp working for Verizon.
Oh, right, right,
It's a
right. Yeah.
fun, which
Yeah.
was, wasn't the most exciting job in the world. It was a lot of data entry,
Yeah.
but met some fun people there. I had a
Okay.
great view until they changed buildings and they moved us all into a closet, but
Right. Sure. Yeah.
life isn't worthwhile.
Right, right.
And eventually,
Uh,
Verizon laid us all off and closed down the project we've been working on,
yeah.
February of 2020.
Yeah.
So
Oh.
right in
Oh.
time, right
Right.
in time to for
The
the world to
pandemic.
fall apart.
Yeah. Right, right. And so, okay. And then you got this other job. But when did you feel most certain or most confident that enough of the depression had lifted that life might get a little easier?
Well, I think there's one moment that really stands out to me, which is um, I was unemployed for a while after Verizon
Yeah.
because, well, frankly, this was at the height of kind of COVID benefits
Right.
and unemployment was very generous, and I didn't feel
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
fiscally obliged to seek out a new job.
Right. Right.
But eventually, I did get a new job. It was another TED job doing mostly data entry. It was
Yeah.
at another It was at a tech company this time called Datadog.
Oh, right,
Um,
right, right,
and I was
right.
working there for about a year, mostly working from home, doing data entry, and I enjoyed it there. I was
Really?
fairly
Yeah.
confident, and towards the end of that, I put an application for a full-time job. I
With
thought I had a
Datadog?
with Datadog.
Yeah,
I I got into the interview process. I thought I was doing pretty well, and then at the very end of it, I was turned down, which was
yeah,
a bit of a
yeah.
blow. I thought, I was probably a little overconfident in that case, but
Okay,
I thought I had an in, and I didn't. And my job was ending, so I'd have to find a new one. And it's the Friday, last day of work on Friday. I get a call from the temp agency,
yeah.
and they say, "Hey, we've got a job at Boston Public Health, but you have to start Monday."
Really? You must have told me this story, but what I remember most is the name Datadog. I think we riffed on that
Yeah.
a lot, right?
Yep. Datadog,
Datadog.
there's a
Yeah.
lot of they make I still only vaguely understand what it is they do. I do know that it's not like a flim flam operation like a lot of these tech companies are. It's we build software backends for businesses
Oh,
that
okay.
kind of puts all of
Yeah.
their various softwares
Right.
together and to one useful bit of thing that your IT team can look at.
Sure.
I'm
All right. So
not a
you
super I'm I'm not a super tech guy. I assume that's useful.
right, right.
But
Well,
I
you're semi super tech, I think, right? No.
I
Okay.
I've written a couple of lines of code in my life. A
Okay.
couple.
Okay. All right.
But I the depression when I got that call from the temp agent, the anxiety really wanted to say, no, take a
Right.
week off.
Right.
You know, you just had a big disappointment. You just finished your job. You've earned a little time to rest and recuperate. Just relax a bit. And I had at that point, I made a decision at that point that, I would love to take a week off. I deserve a week off. The depression's right about that. I've earned that. I've deserved that. It's been rough, but I'm not going to do that. I'm going to take the opportunity. I think this could turn into something really good. And you know what? After my temp stint is done there, I get hired as a fiscal manager, and I'm still working there.
Wow. And that's
And
like
it's
4 years later, whatever, something.
4 years later, I'm still there. There've
Yeah.
been other struggles. We've
Yeah.
talked about those, Johnny.
Definitely.
I have
Definitely.
a hard time maintaining a to-do list. That's the ADHD talking,
Right.
but I'm still there.
Yeah.
I'm still working, and in that sense, I'm doing better than I was ever, really.
Really. And I mean, you took that opportunity before knowing anything about it, right?
I
How
knew
much
it was
did,
Boston Public Health. That's all I knew.
okay. It's not a lot. Um, one of the other things besides the to-do list is getting back to all those contractors, I think. You have to
Yeah,
go through, yeah, tell us
yeah.
about that.
There's a lot of talking to people, mostly through email. Fortunately, um,
Yeah.
anxiety part of me definitely doesn't like talking on the phone. It's
Oh,
I think that might be a generational thing too, as
yeah, it
well.
is. Yeah, yeah,
I like talking on
definitely.
the phone, but you got to
Yeah,
remind people, like, "Excuse me, I sent you this thing a few days ago. Have you done it yet?" And then a few days
yeah,
later, you got to be like, "Hi, I sent you this thing about a
right.
week ago," and then I remind you about it a couple days ago. Have you done it yet?
Yeah,
This
and
can
then you
go
go
on for
home.
quite a while,
Yeah.
but
Well, what's it like working under supervisors in general?
under supervisors, I don't have a huge amount of experience with that. It kind of
Like
depends.
like now, like now.
My current boss,
Yeah.
uh, I think he may. be a bit like me in the terms of ADHD thing because a lot of it's long periods of radio silence followed by short periods of high activity.
Oh yeah, right, 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 right.
Um, and it's we've had our points of friction. Um, and I've definitely made some really bad mistakes. Last summer was very bad. I The ADHD was really getting to me last summer, and I was having a very difficult time getting any work done. But
Yeah. What do you make of what do you make, Santo? What do you make of the term that's really widely used now, and I accept it, neurodivergent, and it covers ADHD and autism and so forth.
it's an interesting one because I think I respect it for what it does. I guess
Yeah.
I don't like the term itself too much
Okay.
because I think a lot of people, I think it kind of underestimates how many people do have these kind of brain things. I think the ideal world is it would just be acknowledged that some people's brains work differently, and it's not
Right.
like a deviation from the norm. Because
Right. Right.
I think normal is a construct. It's
Yeah.
an idea that's been created, and it's an idea. It's an extrovert's idea of what's normal,
Uh huh. Right.
essentially.
Yeah. Um, Let me think about that. No, I definitely agree with what you just said about in an ideal world, it would just be a variation on a theme, so to speak, right?
Mm,
It wouldn't be not normal because we recognize the quote normal is a construct.
mhm.
So that brings us to something about variation on a theme. You know that I'm very into Myers Briggs and the
Yes,
16 variations. And we would have done that right in the beginning.
we did do
We know
that.
you're an introvert. We know you're an introvert. And tell us about your introversion. Because right now, our audience is seeing the extroverted side of you. But that's
I
not
think
the essence of Santo Mama.
no, you're absolutely correct. Because introvert, I think people conflate with being antisocial,
Yeah,
or that like an introvert's someone who doesn't like to talk to people, and that is incorrect.
right,
Um, introvert's someone who gets tired talking to people, who can only talk to people for so long
right.
before they want you. I don't know if it was you or someone else who I think it was you who described it that, you know, we all have the energies that we get
Right.
for interacting with people. And if you're an
Yeah.
extrovert, being around other people charges you up, it fires you up, it makes you build energy from being around other people. Whereas
Correct.
if you're an introvert, it's draining. It's
Right.
fun, but
Right.
it's draining. And
That's
you
right.
have to then go back into your personal headspace, whatever it is you do, your workshop, your
Yeah.
your books, and you have to recharge a bit.
Right. Right.
It's
And that's mostly what you do. All right. We're going to the next spectrum. I think
mhm,
you're definitely an N, right? The intuitive,
yes,
not the S.
intuitive.
Yeah, right. Even
Intuitive.
though
I
the
think
S,
so. I
yeah,
prefer to feel stuff out. Now, please remind me, what's the opposite of intuitive?
was the sensing. And there's a
Hmm.
lot of sensing stuff you do, like all these tools, and you love being craftsman and
Hmm.
so forth. But I've thought about you as an intuitive because you love abstract thought too. You love making connections that are
Yes,
abstract.
I
Yeah,
love categorization. Um, I love
yeah,
putting things in categories. I love sorting things. Um,
okay,
Even from when I was young, my mom got me a book about dinosaurs,
yeah,
and she said I was so excited about the idea that you can have the that like time periods could be sorted into smaller time periods of like
yeah,
yes you have the Mesozoic period, but you can split that into the Triassic, the Jurassic, and the Cretaceous, and
yeah,
that you can split those into even smaller sections. That
okay,
idea blew my mind when I was a kid.
uh-huh.
So I that's where the N comes in is I
Yeah,
love categories. I love taxonomies. I love sorting and organizing.
Yeah, and you love ideas. You love big ideas,
Hmm.
right?
I think one of the big things I love about history is I want to know why people made the decisions they do.
Right, right.
Why did Alexander decide to turn back? Why did he decide to cut that knot? Why did
Yeah,
so and so make this especially mistakes? I love reading about people who made mistakes and why they did that, why they thought that was a good idea.
yeah, yeah, yeah. All right, the next spectrum
Hmm.
is the T and the F. T for thinking, F for feeling, but it's not the colloquial use of the words.
Hmm.
And it has to do with how you make decisions, really. And the F
Hmm.
people use compassion, intuition, connection, empathy, and so forth. So they're very much connected to whatever the decision is. So it's more emotional. And the T's are much more detached, and they rely on things like rules, regulations, laws, customs, or past decisions they've made. They tend to be more predictable in their decision making. And I pretty much strongly think you're an F.
I agree with that.
Okay.
No argument there. Um,
Okay.
I
Yeah.
I think that I prefer, for instance, a moral compass to like a legal compass, essentially.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. That's a good way of
That's
putting
the
it.
table. Yeah.
And then the fourth spectrum
Hmm.
is the P and the J. So the P is perceiving and the J is for judging. But again, it's not a colloquial use. So this is basically um, how you plan your life, so to speak, or your life course. So it's a big discrepancy. It's a big contradiction. And this one has the most difficulty in reconciling, like if it's a couple. Okay. So the Jays see life as a roadmap. Okay. At age 20, I'm going to do this. At age 30, I'll get married. At age 35, I'll have kids. 40, build a white picket fence and all that stuff, right? And the P's, so it's very straightforward, very linear. And the
Hmm.
P's see life as a journey, twists and turns.
Set of next steps at
Yeah,
most.
right. That's
And
right.
I think at one point in my life, I was judging myself by J standards, and I realized
Yeah,
that was a bad idea. Um, like I kind of am a P almost by necessity
yeah,
because I think a lot of people my generation too, if like you set up a roadmap of your life, if you're going to own a house, for for instance, of when you're going to own a house or have kids, for instance,
right,
um,
right.
I think circumstance probably disappointed a lot of people
That's right.
in that.
Yeah.
But
All right. So we got you down as four letters. Do you
mhm,
remember what the four letters are?
I, N, F, and P.
P. Okay. And that's one of the 16. They're not all evenly divided.
No,
But what I suggested to you was the INFP, um, their natural strengths are to be able to think on their own, to think originally, and to tune out other things in general. They're definitely not conformist. They're definitely not into, uh, let's say, as young kids in primary school, they're not wanting to be the teacher's pet. They really just want to be like a poet under a tree, something like that. Um, they're not into being part of the in crowd usually. Okay. And, people misunderstand them a lot.
hmm
And the dominant type uh, in things like that and in conventional world is the opposite on all four spectrums. The ESTJ. All four are opposite. So therefore, the INFP is not well understood. These ESTGs are usually the high school principal, the head of the Chamber of Commerce, the kindergarten teacher, all that stuff, right? And they love to enforce
quarterback.
rules. What's that?
A high school quarterback.
Yeah, that's right. Right. That's right. And they love to enforce rules and make rules. Okay. But they don't necessarily, uh, they're not going to punish the INFP. They're sort of going to, if correct, if doing things right, at least they'll kind of leave him alone, you know,
Hmm.
and sort of recognize his natural strengths if they can do that. So the INFP has a struggle with being misunderstood, but not necessarily with being a rebel and going up with conflict, which is what I am. I'm an ENFP. So just the E puts me
That that
ready.
makes that makes you a contrarian. That's
Sometimes, yeah, sometimes that, and sometimes, questioning and challenging the system, right? So I'm definitely on the shit list, maybe. Okay. No, right. So it's really interesting. Does it help you to understand that in a way?
yeah, and I think it's kind of come to my personality of like I can't be maybe I can't be, the most productive member of society,
Right.
sort of in this very focused world,
Yes.
but I can try and be nice to people. I can
Oh,
try
yes.
and be inoffensive and entertaining and dare I say charming even.
Right. I would say charming. Yeah.
Hmm. And
That's
I
not a
think
dig. Yeah.
thank you.
No, you're right. And being compassionate and all that
Mhm.
stuff, right?
It was I remember my sister was talking with a family friend of ours who said of me, and I think this was he said of me, I don't think basically said, he wasn't complimentary of my talents. He thought my talents were kind of meager, but he also said that I work very hard to be kind. And
Kind.
that part
Yeah.
was honestly one of the nicest things someone's ever said about me, I feel. Because being kind, being compassionate is sometimes you got to work at it because you do want to do things for yourself too. And also got to try and find a balance as well. Sometimes being kind is you got to help somebody out even when
Yeah.
it's going to be miserable or
Yeah.
it's not going to be fun. Uh,
Yeah.
I you don't want to have a I don't want to have a conversation about someone's the struggles they're having through life. That's going to really bring my day down. But giving them a chance to talk about it are going to help theirs. So
Yeah. Yeah.
even though I am kind of an instant gratification type as a general rule,
No, I mean, but
gotta
that's
put that
being
aside for other
like,
people.
well, that's a form of generosity and so forth, right?
Hmm.
Um, well, Santo, this has been one of the best discussions. No, really, this has been great. And the fact that you uh, have a really great memory of our therapy work and, of course, of the external world as well, and that you've come to be very, very able to share your story and also stories in general. And I just want to say I'm really pleased that you've been a long-term client of mine. And by the way, I don't like the word client. I just saw an article yesterday. Now listen to this. Somebody came out. Somebody kind of I'm having a hard time. Somebody in kind of, let's say, the new age section of psychotherapy, right, was talking about clients not good, patients not good, a bunch of other options. And she came up with therapy participants, therapy participant. And I like that so much I might want to start using it and explain it. What do you think?
I don't know. It doesn't roll off the tongue quite as well as clients do, but
Say that
I
it
think
doesn't
it's I
what?
think it's a step in the right direction, though. Just got
Yeah.
to make it a little. It's gotta be a little. It's gotta be a little pithier. You know what I mean?
Oh,
Got to
okay.
bring that letter count down.
Right, right. Yeah, because client sounds too businesslike, right?
Hmm.
Yeah. I think if
I'll have my
somebody
people meet with your people, and we'll discuss our feelings.
right, right. Yeah, and I thought of I think of sort of with the word client of, a lawyer, let's say, sitting back in his chair with really, really fancy clothes on at a desk and looking very proper, very, very formal. Okay. And that's not me at all. Uh, and that's not the relationship. So we'll have to come up with something. Santo, I'm going to put you in charge of this and talk
Oh
to your
boy.
friends in the Cooper section, the
Hmm.
Milliner section, the Wainwright section, and all those sections.
All
I
right.
think they can, right?
Hmm. All right.
Okay.
We'll
Um,
have a little brainstorm about a better, more marketable term than
yeah,
therapy participants.
participant.
Have our
Yeah,
people meet and
yes.
come back with ideas next Tuesday.
Right. Okay, man. I'll see you next week, buddy. Okay?
See you
Take
later.
care. Okay.
Bye.
Bye bye.